Okay. Hello. Test 1, 2. All right. Let's get this rolling. Switch to that. Cool. Hey, how's it going? I hope you're doing well today. As always, my name is Kyle Loafman. Hope you're having a wonderful day. Today we have a fun stream lined up. We're gonna be playing through all the All State Etudes. I'm gonna give just a little bit longer for people to stroll in. But while I wait around, I need to oil one valve really quick. So I'm gonna go do that, and we can kind of chat a little bit. Hopefully, as people keep rolling here. But yeah, I'm excited, and I guess while I'm oiling my valve, because I wanted to start before we get into it officially. I wanted to start just to talk a little bit about just some general tips for preparing for All State Etudes. Yeah, because there's a lot, and there's a lot of overlap in preparing the different levels. Of course, it's slightly different for each. Sorry, I have a little bit of an itch there. It's a little bit different for each level, right? But generally, a lot of the preparation is very similar, right? But yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and get started with oiling my valves, and I'm going to just talk about a few of the little things you can think about in general. And these kind of apply for whatever level, no matter whether you're a middle school age, or you're a senior in high school. These kind of apply all the way across the board. But yeah, let me get my oil and stuff. We can get rolling with this. But yeah, like I said, hope you're having a wonderful day. Probably a tiny bit late in starting this, but it's fine. Better late than never. I mean, I guess I'm not too late. It's still August, and the audition is until December. So I guess in that context, we're still plenty on time. Oops. Don't want to rock that. But yeah, so anyways, let's talk some generalities with preparing for etudes. I think honestly the two biggest ones I would say is focus on notes and rhythms first before you start worrying about what kind of dynamics you're going to use, how are you going to phrase it, all that fun stuff. Think more about... Oh, I guess I need the chat panel. That would be good. I have to remember how to get to that panel. That's not good. I don't really need this panel. Docs. Chat. There we go. Cool. Now I can see the chat happening. Okay. Cool. Yeah, so focus on the notes and rhythms first. If you don't have those down pretty well, I would say don't worry about the dynamic contrast, the tempo contrast, expression that you're going to put on top of the whatever you're doing. I wouldn't worry too much about those things until you understand how to play it in general without any context to those things. But yeah, and so in regards to rhythms, focus on the rhythms, because that applies mostly to technical ones and somewhat to the lyrical ones too in some bits, but a large part in the technical ones, right? So when you play through those, focus on the rhythms, play it on one note, and something which I'll demonstrate with some of the technical ones, you can even do it where you add a note at a time. So like you take your first note, you play the rhythm on that one note, and then you slowly add in the rest of the actual notes. That's one way of doing it. I will say it's a little bit complex to think about. I've had mixed results with trying it with students. Sometimes they get on it, sometimes it's. But it's just an idea for thinking about rhythms. Yeah, and that's the biggest thing. And then also, obviously, taking it slower, right? Don't just say, okay, the tempo is 120. We can't go any slower. At the end of the day, as long as you're going as close to that as you can, that's perfectly fine. But especially when you're first picking it up, if you're not playing it, I would say at least 60 to 70% as slow. So, like, if it's, for example, if the tempo is written at 120, um, you should try, I would even say try to go as low as 50 for some of it. So I would say try to go to, if it was 120, try to go around 60 for some of it. If not, closer to 80. Yeah, for where you start to work on the things. Hopefully that's not too loud. But so yeah, try to think about that as you're playing through them. And then also in regards to rhythm, isolate chunks. Um, I would say sometimes even just working on half a beat at a time helps a lot. I know something I did actually last night in a lesson I had. We had this rhythm where it's like dun 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 dun. So I had them play it just the rhythm, just focusing on da 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 da, just that overall flow. And then we kind of broke it down into the chunks of the actual notes because it was like bum 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 bum, something like that. So we broke it down first into bum 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 bum, and then the next one we did the next pairing bum 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 bum, and then we kind of did it a little bit more in context with rest in between bum 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 bum, and then we pieced it all together. Bum ba bum ba dum ba bum. So just finding ways to kind of break it down. I think a big thing with getting better with rhythms is break it down, confuse yourself a tiny bit, but ultimately just keep on trying to understand it and break it down as small as you can. If you're going in 4/4, feel free to go as slow as thinking about the 16th note first as the like quarter note beat. Don't just think quarter. Be willing to play it as slow as da 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 da, and think about that. And same with these, because I know with like, I think one of the top, I think Symphonic band Lyrical, 6/8. Da 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 da. Feel free to take that. Think about the 16ths as the 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. Think about the 16ths, and then work your way to thinking. I might be a tiny bit fast on that. I think it's like 48, but we'll get there when we get there. That'll be towards the back end of the stream, of course. Trying to think what else to say about rhythm. Break it down, isolate rhythms that confuse you. Add in the notes as you need to. Okay, and then for notes, especially if you have large jumps, something I also did in a lesson last night is fill in the gaps. If you have, and we'll demonstrate with this first etude that we're going to get to. If you have like a 5th or 6th or higher jump, even like a 4th sometimes is tricky, or 3rd, whatever. If we're skipping notes in general, it's going to be a little bit more tricky than just playing note to note. So not always, but a lot of the time. feel free to fill in those gaps, which like I said, I'll demonstrate with the first etude we're going to do, but just to kind of talk about it verbally. So if we're going from like an F to a C, we're going to just fill that in by scale. Like we'll go F, G, A, B flat, C. Assuming we're in the key of F. If we're in the key of like A flat, then we would add in the A flat in the middle. F, G, A flat, B flat, C, or whatever, etc., etc. And then from there, we're going to lessen the gaps. So then, or broaden the gaps. Yeah. So once again, going with that fifth kind of pattern, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're going to skip the 2 and the 4 there. So we'll go 1, 3, 5. Kind of like an arpeggio, right? And then we'll go 1, 5. And then if for different intervals, we can kind of change it up a little bit more. Like even with a fifth, we can go 1, 4, 5 instead of 1, 3, 5, 1, 4, 5. I don't know if I sing that right or not, but hopefully that makes sense. I'll demonstrate a little bit when we get to it. But the point is, and I'll kind of show this, I'll show this also with notation software so you can kind of vaguely understand it a little bit more. But point is, we're trying to fill in the gap, and then we're slowly trying to delete the notes we put in. So if we add in 3 notes in between, we would first try to delete 1 or 2, then we delete 2, and then we delete the last one. And of course, as the intervals get larger, we're going to take a little bit more time bridging the gap from filling it in completely to having a complete gap, right? Because there's a lot of different ways. Because also, I'm thinking about this more in a scalier way, like we're following a major scale basically. But you could also very easily fill it in by chromatics, where you go purely chromatic, which also is a good exercise in its own right. Just thinking further about chromatics, because I feel like routinely with whenever chromatics are introduced, there's confusion. So I feel like even as simple as it is to just do scalar, like following a major scale, filling in the gaps like that, it is also good to think about it chromatically as well. Chromatics are just as important as major scale, scalar type intervals. Because ultimately, we're kind of skipping some notes when we're going in a major scale pattern, right? If you think about it in like a micro scale, well, if we're going like really, really micro, we are jumping over a lot of notes. But thinking 12 tone, the 12 note system that we have in majority of classical music, we're skipping some notes. Some notes we're not. Like, I think it's major scale, it's from 7 to 8, and then 4 to 5. Yeah. Yeah, 4 to 5, I'm pretty sure. That we're going half steps, right? And we're in a 12-tone system, right? We're not skipping anything there. But then for a lot of them, like the first note, B flat to C, we're skipping B natural there. So if you think about it in microscale, we're kind of leaping a lot more than we think we are. But that's getting way too small. Other things to think about when preparing these. Oh, here's my biggest tip when just preparing and building your routine around preparing for the auditions. I would highly recommend just every day when you start your routine, play through your scales that you have to do. It's simple, but doing that routinely will help it. So when you get to the day of, it's just there. and you don't have to worry about, oh, I don't know my scales. Just start now, get it all out of the way so that when it gets to December, you're just like, yeah, scales, whatever. And if you're feeling comfortable to it, try to add more octaves. Some of these, it's going to be harder, right? Like B flat isn't too challenging. Um, it starts to get more challenging because we have to go above the already somewhat high F, right? Up to the B flat right above the staff. The one that I think is an easy 2 octave to get first is E flat if you have a 4-valve tuba. If you don't have a 4-valve tuba, I'm sorry. It's still possible for you. It's just a tad harder, right? I think that's good. That feels a lot better. Cool. Okay. Yeah, but yeah, so think about that. Just practice your scales. Add in more scales. Because I forget if they let you play more scales than you're allotted, or if it's just you have to, you can play more octaves than what's written. I can't remember off the top of my head. It's been a hot minute since I've looked at the rubrics for that kind of thing. So I would even say, like, if you're middle school, you feel great about the 4 major scales you have to do. Learn the next 4 for concert band level. And then same thing, if you're at concert band level, you're comfortable with the 8 scales, learn symphonic band level. There's no reason why you can't learn all 12 scales. Yeah. But obviously with the lower levels, you have a set amount of time, right, to do all your scales. So probably doing all 12 major scales in 50 seconds is not feasible. But I think adding an octave on a scale could be feasible. Maybe. But anyways, I digress. We're going to talk more about scales in the next stream. I'm going to try to do it. I'm just trying to do these weekly. Saturdays or Sundays. Maybe even Fridays or what's the other day? Thursdays. Anywhere from Thursday to Monday, I'm going to try to do one stream during that time period. Just to talk about tuba things in general. Not always all state things. Of course, in the fall, I will be talking about it quite a bit. Because it's important to what I do. And I like helping students be more successful with the All State Etudes. So stay tuned for those. Follow me to find out when those will be. Okay, but without further ado, I think I'm ready to get going with this. We're going to kick things off with the first etude, which will be the Lyrical Etude. Get out of here. It's going to be the Lyrical Etude for middle school. Okay. Yeah, so let me switch to that. Transition. Good. Cool. Hopefully that is clear enough. Let me know if the music... I'll zoom in just a tad. There we go. That looks great. Let me know if I need to zoom in or out on the music. Otherwise, we're going to kick it off with the middle school Lyrical Etude. So let's talk about a couple things with that. Obviously, not perfect. There was definitely some mistakes. I meant to do. Well, it's fine. Okay. I meant to record that so we could listen back and kind of give further critiques, but just critiques from what I heard and what I felt. I definitely could have done more with the dynamic contrasts, especially with the crescendo towards the end. I think we really need to push through that to energize to the end of that. Also, I'm just going to mention this once. Obviously, yes, we do have breath marks. I don't think we need to observe every single one of these breath marks. If you feel super, super, super comfortable with making it through the whole phrase. I know the one especially I don't like is the one in measure 7 right here. I'm not a big fan of this. Da 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 dee da 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 da. I like driving through this E into the C. Obviously, if you need to take a breath here, please do so. I think an important thing with playing these is to make sure you're keeping going and playing it well. Obviously, yes, playing it artistically is important as well, but if you can't play it well in general, then the artistic interpretation you add doesn't really matter. So yeah, this is the only breath I'm not a big fan of. All of the other ones I think are valid in their own rights. Like I said, if you feel comfortable that you can make any of these phrases work without taking that breath in the middle, go for it. Just make sure you can get through it. Because I will say the places where we absolutely have to breathe are right here. That is the end of the phrase. This is an end of the phrase. This is the end of the phrase. And the end is the end of the phrase. So those are the 4 places where you have to take breaths. I'll quickly just highlight. So like that one, and that one, and that one. Oh, no, I don't want that highlighted that much. That one and that one are slightly more optional than these. These ones I would say are definites. We have to breathe here. We have to take a breath there. Well, obviously, the rest kind of tells us we have to take a breath, right? Pause, right? But the others are kind of, if you need to, that's the place to do it. If you try to take a breath anywhere else, like let's say you try to breathe here, or here, or I don't know, here, just choosing random places, that's not quite so great. Da 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 da. A little bit awkward. I guess not the worst if you can make it work. Because here's something to kind of think about with breathing in general. Breathing on bar lines is in certain situations okay. The reason why a lot of people will tell you don't breathe on bar lines is just because if you breathe more close to the bar line on the last beat of a measure, a tendency that could happen is elongating that last beat. So the big thing with taking breaths, especially these middle breaths, these yellow breaths I have here, or yeah, it's the yellow breaths. You want to make sure they're exactly in time and you're not elongating it. Because think about these middle ones, these are actually commas. And then these other ones are periods. Those are the end of sentences, right? This is, hi, how are you? I am doing well. That's a sentence, right? And then, hi, how are you, comma, I am doing well. And this is where you respond, right? If we're doing it like that. And you can kind of think about that. If you want to think about it that way, that's a fine way of thinking about it. But think about these breaths as more commas and periods. Where are the absolute stops where we're kind of more taking a bigger pause versus the places where it's more of a we're keeping on chugging through this sentence. This is still a sentence, right? So that's something to think about with those. Yeah, like I said, we want to make sure we drive through this crescendo. I would say try to save more for the end. Make it as gradual as you can, I think, but save a lot more for this last measure so we really get the build into it. Try not to build up too much by this top point here. And what are some... Oh, yeah, let's talk about filling in the gap. Because we have the big thing, I think one of the biggest challenges with this etude in particular, we have a lot of these large leaps. Like this first opening one. We have a sixth right out the gate. It's a pretty big interval, right? It's not the largest interval in music in general, but it's still nonetheless a big interval. And I think that's a big common theme. So I think this is, oh, nope, I don't want to highlight that much. I think this interval here, oh, I'm not having luck with this. Okay, this interval here. Oh, wait, no, I have this interval here. Okay. This interval here is also a sixth. This is kind of a sixth with a middle note, right? So actually, honestly, this might be a better place to start with thinking about the flow of this. Because, right, if we just get rid of this, it's the same as this. This is just ornamentation. It's not completely essential for this. Any other sixths that we have? No, those are the main two. Yeah, and then we have a couple of fifths, right? We have a descending fifth here. This is arpeggiating descending fifth, kind of. We got another fifth here. This is a third. We have quite a few thirds. But filling in these gaps, I'm going to switch over to my music notation software really quick. Put that on top. Yep. Like here's our interval, right? We have, here we go. We have an F. We don't want to use the MIDI device for input. We have the F. And we have a C, right? So we can fill that in by just going. Obviously, that'll be a flat because we're in the key of F major, which has a B flat. We can do that. Obviously, like I said, we can also fill it in chromatically. Right, and then as we go working on get more comfortable with feeling where this note is compared to this note, we can. I'm just gonna stick with this because chromatics. There's a lot more notes to worry about, but we can get rid of like this note and turn this into a rest. And just go bum 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 bum, right? And then we get rid of this note, and then we get rid of this note. Or we can just do kind of the opposite, get rid of this one first. And then we get rid of the middle one. We can go crazy. There's a lot of options here, right? I'll demonstrate. I'll play these here in a second. And then I'll do one more playthrough on it. See if I can get some more things that I wanted in here. But hopefully that kind of makes sense. Like I said, I'll illustrate some of that. Let me quickly... Oh, no, that's not what I wanted to click on. Okay. But I'll write down what I'm going to do. So we'll start, like I said, I'm going to start. Then we're going to do. And we're just skipping that third note there. And then we're going to go. And then finally, we play the written interval. And that's one simple way of doing it. Obviously, we can do this backwards too. C, F, right? But I'll demonstrate this. And etc., etc. Hopefully that kind of makes sense. And this is something that we could very easily we can easily take any of these intervals, do that with. Like obviously some of these we're not going to fill in quite as much, right? These thirds that we have through here, right? We're probably, like, that is a good one to fill. Bum, 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 bum. That's a good one to fill for sure. But it's not going to be as complex as trying to fill in this gap or this gap, or where's the other 6? This gap. That's a 4th, sorry. But yeah, so biggest thing is just filling in, finding ways to fill the gaps and ways that help you. Okay, so we've kind of gone over time with this, but that's okay. We're going to go on. I'm going to play this through one more time. And then we're gonna... Where's the eraser? I don't want that. Don't want that. Okay. I'm actually gonna draw in this crescendo so I remember it. And what else do I want to remember? What else went wrong? I think there was 1 or 2 notes that were a little funky, but otherwise it was fine. Okay, cool. Well, let's go through it. I'm going to play this one more time, then we'll move on to the technical etude, and then we'll move on to concert band. Here we go. This is the other thing that I wanted to check. I just remembered about it. Is tempo, because I'm 90% certain I'm way too slow. Like I said, tempo is, in the beginning, I would say don't worry too much about the tempo. But I want this to be... I could just pause. Do, da, 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 dee, do, dee, do, do. Okay, not too far off, but definitely a bit slower. Okay, here we go. Yeah, that felt a lot closer to where we should be with that. Let's do the technical one, and this one I will start with a tempo. Okay. And I will say the good thing, because I can't remember. Oh, here's a generality I forgot to say about technical etudes. Um, I would say focus. Don't worry about the technical etude too much at first. I would say at the earliest, worry about it late September. But I would say more worry about it in October. And I would say additionally, if you don't feel comfortable with the lyrical etude, or sorry, wait until you feel comfortable with the lyrical etude before you play the technical etudes. Yeah, I think that's one of the most important things with this, because the big thing is with this audition process, first round you play scales, sight reading, lyrical etude. Then the second round you add on the technical. I can't remember if you have to play both, but I know you have to play the technical for the second round. So if you can't play the lyrical very well, you don't feel comfortable with it at all, odds are, no matter how well you can play the technical etude, you won't get a chance to play it. So think about that. Obviously, I would say feel free to practice this anyways. October, November, even if you're not feeling comfortable with the lyrical etude, because we have to get this in our head. Because who knows? Maybe like the last week, everything will just click, and the lyrical etude will be great. And if you haven't looked at the technical etude by then, you're kind of screwed. Even though you do have like a month in between, but sometimes a month isn't enough. But it can also be that 1 month working on the technical etude can be, maybe that month for you could be a good influence of, oh snap, I got to get my stuff together and really get this under my fingers. Could be the influence you need to get it to where it needs to be. So here's a technical etude. Pretty straightforward, I think. Um, I think the one of the early challenges with this is obviously it starts low and it kind of sits. Well, I would say it has good range, right? Because at the end we get up to the D's in the middle of the staff, right? So the range wise, we got a pretty good spread because we have low G's there, and then we go up to the D's in the middle of the staff. So decent range. Oh, is that? It's about an octave and a half. Yeah. But we have this one's a lot lower than the previous one, right? I think, what was the lowest note in the previous one? I think it was just a C, right? Yeah, it was just a C. This one goes a whole fourth below that. So biggest thing with this, if you don't feel comfortable with that G, I would even say like flip this and do kind of the filling in method. Bom, 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 bom. Work your way down to that. And you can even start from the F and go bum, 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 bum. Let's do a simple little exercise to build down to that. I'll kind of write that out really quickly here. And I would say slur it. I would say actually it's probably not bad to do either slurring or tonguing, whichever you like. I like slurring down to it first just because we're thinking about spreading the sound from the upwards downwards. If you're someone who's better with the slightly higher notes than the lower notes like that. Mm. And then, okay, yeah, here's my simple little exercise for thinking about range. Down here from, I think that's 16, 16 down. I'll play it really quickly. Obviously, I went a little bit lower than what I wrote. It's okay. You can go as low as you want with this. If you can't make it to the low F, which you should be trying to get to that low F, right? Because that's one of the required scales is the F2 octaves for this grade level, right? So we do need to get to that low F. I would say go down to that part that I just got down to the low E, or I went down to the low D. If you can get to the low D, sweet, awesome, cool. If you can just get to the low E, sweet, awesome. Low F, that's cool too. But I would say try to get below the F, because I think with these type of things, it's important to make sure our range is much wider than what we need it to be. So here's a simple thing. Like I said, you can slur this or you can tongue this. I would even say it's good to do both. Obviously, this is one way of doing it. Another way we can do this, we can just do lip slurs, right? Start high and work our way down. So you can do something like, I'm gonna edit, add 50. You can do something like start from the B flat. And then follow the cycle of the lip slur pattern. Right, etc., etc., etc. If you aren't doing some sort of lip slurs in your warm-up routines, you're missing out. They're not always the most exciting things, but this is literally how our instruments work. So if you're not comfortable with lip slurs, you're kind of missing a whole part of how to play our instruments. I don't mean to alarm you, but you should be do lip slurs. Lip slurs are great. They help with flexibility. If you feel like, and this also helps with the gaps, right? Those big jumps. If you feel like they're unpredictable, lip slurs. They will help you kind of be more comfortable with skipping and doing those bigger leaps. But yeah, just continuing this as far down as you can go. I would say like at minimum, trying to get to the 4-valve combination, if not going to 2 and 3 or 2 and 4, sorry, and beyond, right? So here's the 4-valve and the 2 and 3. Uh, yeah, like that. And then I'll just write it out really quick. Bum, 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 bob. And then keep on going to, if you can. I'll demonstrate the low end of that really fast. And etc., etc., etc. You can even go further beyond that if you want to. Sorry, my hair is so hard to deal with sometimes. You can go much further beyond that if you like. If you can, I recommend it. Because I think the thing is with lip slurs, for us tuba players especially, a lot of us on average these days have 4-valve tubas, right? So we should be trying to use all 4 of those in our warm-ups, right? A lot of times why we don't use them, go further than 2 and 4, 1, 2, 3, is because a lot of other brass instruments stay at 3 valves, which I'm not trying to throw hate, not trying to throw shade, but we can go further than that. So on our own, especially, we should be trying to go further on that. That's a whole nother stream. I think, like I said, the next stream we're going to do fundamentals, including scales. So we'll talk more about that kind of slurring. I just want to share a small little thing about lip slurs, because lip slurs is valid in most of what we do. But yeah, another thing with this, be really clear with all of the articulation differences. Because that's the big thing about this, is it's technical, so we want to make sure the articulations are clear, and it's obvious that we're playing legato, or legato accented, or legato marcato, marcato. Yeah, we want to make sure all these are clear, even in the piano, right, with that measure 5, 6, 7, beep, bum, 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 bum. Just think about it like we're trying to fill that space, still like a legato, but we're amplifying the beginning of it just slightly. Bum, bum, to, 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 to. To 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 to. Give a little more emphasis. Just like kind of use your diaphragm a little bit more there to push through those notes. But yeah, let's see, what else do I have to say? Work on getting down to the low notes. Yeah, just be light as you can. Even though it says passante, we still on average want to think light tonguing so it's clear. To 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 to. And I would say probably, because I think I tend to do a rotondo. I think I remember doing that last time I tried to play this, but I think we really want to push through it, straight through, no retardando. So I'll try to do that better this last run. But other than that, emphasize dynamics, and here especially since it's more technical, we especially want to save the crescendo more for the last measure and a half of the crescendo. Really pushing through when we get to those legatos at measure, is that 10? Measure 10. When we get to these legatos here, we're using these to kind of start pushing this down here. And here we're just thinking soft. I would even say whatever point we're at here dynamically, we should be softer here. From one of the groups I play in, our conductor keeps on harping about us with crescendos and decrescendos to think about more crescendos starting softer so we have somewhere to build to. So you might even want to think about here playing just a little bit, like think about this as maybe like a pianissimo maybe. And then here's where the crescendo really starts and builds to here, where we have a devastating ending, not devastating, just comfortably devastating, right? We want to have impact with this fortissimo and these accents here in the end, but of course we don't want to blast it through, right? So, yeah. So like really think, yeah, and I'll just write these out so you can kind of see, but drive through, fill these out, but I'm going to use like a little red just to give a little emphasis. Boom. So we think to, and make sure this really connects here. And here, obviously, phrasing doesn't matter quite as much with the lyrical, right? But we still want to make sure our breaths are in time. So wherever you breathe, even if you're trying to, like you decide for some reason to breathe right there, I have no clue why you do that when this place exists. But if you did choose to breathe here, make sure it's in time. Do, di, da, 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 da. Yeah, actually, no, scratch that. Don't even think about breathing here. This is a really not great place to breathe. So really focus on, use these longer notes, like even quarter notes. Like here, I would say, is not a bad place to breathe. Are there better places? Probably. But I think this is an okay place to breathe because we land and then we take a breath. Beep ba bom beep bom beep ba 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 bom beep ba bom bom bom. Because with this being an accent, that gives us teeny tiny bit of space. Not very much, because accents aren't about giving space; they're more about emphasis than they are about space. But sometimes adding space gives emphasis. Okay, but I'm going to try this one more time. Not bad, I think. I think I still could have done some things better. But I think that was a better attempt at it. I felt like it was more effective with this crescendo. Obviously here, I think I was a tiny bit too long when I played that little part. And I probably could have given these a little more emphasis here, but I felt like this line especially was really good. And I faltered one or two times, but that's okay. We don't talk about that. Let's move on, shall we? Let's go to the concert band Lyrical. Cool. Okay. Okay. This one doesn't feel quite so familiar to me. But I've probably played some version of this at some point, so let's see how this goes. Yeah, I can definitely tell this is a higher level etude than our previous etude we play. But yeah, okay. So we got a couple things to talk about. First, let's go through my mistakes. First of all, because like I said, I do remember this now that I'm playing this, but I haven't really played any of these. So a lot of the mistakes are because I'm not completely sight reading, but I'm rereading from not reading in a long time. But anyways, so a couple of things with this. This one especially, I would say try not to play it at this tempo until you feel really comfortable with it. It's a fast tempo for a lyrical etude. So I would say try it if you can, if you're comfortable, half speed, which half of that is like 58. If my math is correct. Yeah, 58. Da do da do da do da do da 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 dee do da da dee do. Okay. Take it slow. You don't have to go that slow if you want to, but I would say at least take it at minimum 70 to 80 to start with, while you get used to all the leaps and the slight changes in rhythms, right? Because the first line, pretty straightforward, right? We just have 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1. And then we have eighth notes in the last measure of that line. And the second line, same thing for the first two measures, but then we add triplets. What? So we really want to be careful with these different rhythms that come in the second and third lines. And then, of course, with 13, 14, 14, 15, we want to make sure we're taking that slowly, Be da 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 dee da 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 dee da 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 dee da da. And we can do the same thing if you're feeling not comfortable with that low F sharp. Similar kind of thing that we did with the previous one with the low range building. Try to see if you can go lower and just really push through it. Big thing with playing lower is thinking pushed out jaw very slightly. Think deep, just think like very slightly. I think that's a lot better because obviously dropping the jaw works. That's the general motion of what we want to think. But it only works to a certain degree, right? Because if we keep on dropping, it's hard to keep the lips together. So alternatively, we can just think about pushing outwards with our jaw. Very slightly. And that will help us to kind of get closer to the air we need for these low notes. Because air direction vaguely matters. When you're playing tuba and brass instruments, obviously if you're playing flute, it's everything. For brass instruments, it's not quite everything, but it does matter sometimes, and it does help sometimes. And I think part of it too is just how we're moving our tongue inside of our mouth too. Helps the notes to come out. The lower our tongue is, the lower the notes. The higher the tongue is in our mouth, the higher the notes. And I would even say try to take a second. I know singing is not something we're not in a band to sing all the time. But take a second to sing on your own. Be like, la, la, and think about where your tongue is. You might notice some weird little things. Because surprisingly, there's a lot of similarities between singing and playing brass instruments. Maybe not surprisingly, but I digress. But yeah, just be ready for these rhythms. Because they don't completely come out of nowhere, but they do vaguely come out of nowhere, right? Because the second line, it feels like we're doing the same thing as the first line. Da 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 dee da 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 dee da da dee da 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 dee da 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 dee da 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 dee da da dee da 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 dee da da. Right? It almost seems like the same thing, but then it's like, psych, we're moving on. So you gotta be ready for those change in rhythms, and then obviously the last two lines kind of do something completely different. So, not as much confusion there. But yeah, just be ready for those rhythms. I would say as we're getting closer to those triplets, try to think triplets in your head. And you might want to just practice filling in some of these longer notes. Like here, doing two sets of triplets here. So that when we get here, we're all ready and set up for success. And alternatively, for this line with the 16ths here, we can start thinking 16ths. Kind of filling in the gaps. Like I was saying with filling in the gaps for intervals, we can fill in the gaps with rhythms too by filling in the subdivisions underneath. Obviously, it's a little bit harder to fill in triplets over solid eighth notes, but we can still put in triplets around eighth notes so that we can further feel the change between dot 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 one and triplet one and triplet one and triplet one and big thing with rhythms is understanding rhythms is just audiating. The more we can hear these rhythms, the more we can play these rhythms. It's the same thing with notes. The more we can hear the notes, the more we can play the notes. So yeah. So let's play. I'm going to do one little exercise and then we're going to play it one more time. I'm not going to go quite so fast this time, just so I can get a clear and accurate performance of it. So I will say that for any of these etudes, if you feel like you can play like 5 to 10 beats under and play it really well, that's fine. It's a lot better than you playing the tempo as written and making a lot of mistakes, I feel like. Obviously, yeah, get as close to the tempo as you can. But I think it's okay to go a tiny bit under to show your accuracy. But obviously, yes, what's the end goal is 116. That's what we want to do. So I'm going to demonstrate this kind of subdivision-y thing. And then the next line, filling in all those with sixteenths. So let's see how that goes. I'm going to take it a tiny bit slower. And then I'm going to quickly just run through really slowly that last line, just because that was also something, well, that was the main thing that I messed up when I played it through the first time. But there we go. Also a really quick note about that last little line there. I think it's important to note the dynamics for this. We're playing piano, right? There's no sort of contrast. Obviously, I think if you want to add a crescendo, maybe it could be fine, but I would say don't add a crescendo, but focus on playing piano and let your air last longer. So we actually drive through that in one breath. Because I think there is probably a place or two we could breathe in the middle of that we would be moderately okay with, but the best course of action with that whole last line is to breathe on that eighth rest right there in the first measure. And it's a little bit redundant because do, 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 but it does help to kind of rejuice up. So I don't think it would hurt to add a little extra breath there. Just as long as you're not going bum, 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 breathing after every other one like that. But I'm going to try this one more time. Tiny bit slower, and then we're going to move on. Still a couple little mistakes here and there, but I would say that's overall better than my first try with that, especially with that last line. Although I will say playing that at a slower tempo makes it feel like it drags on for a while. So yeah, just pace yourself, really bide by that piano there, and you'll have success in lasting through that whole last line without taking a breath. Okay, shall we move on to the technical etude for concert band? Yeah, I'm at least for me, I like to audiate and kind of think about, like, and by audiate I mean like kind of say or sing some of the notes and rhythms that I have in the piece that I'm sight reading. So it might not hurt when you're sight reading these if you haven't sight read these already. Just take a second to think about sing it out loud. Dee da dee da da dee da dee da dee da dee da da dee da dee da da dee da dee da 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 dee da dee da da do dee do 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 dee do 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 dee do dee do 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 dee do 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 dee do dee do dee do 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 dee do da da dee do 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 do. Something like that. Just because I think it's good to think, like I think I said this earlier really briefly, but I think important thing with learning etudes, learning music, is learning to hear it more in here. The more we can hear it inside of our head, the more success we will have. But yeah, I'm going to try this. I'm going to try to get a little closer to the tempo. I'm going to go 108. Dee da dee da da dee da dee da dee da dee da da dee da dee da 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 dee da dee da 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 dee. Get my microphone. Hello. Okay. Cool. Yeah, not bad. I think pretty good for first time reading that in a hot minute. So let's talk about a couple things with this. So it has some hidden complexities. Maybe not hidden, but it definitely has some complexity to it, right? The biggest thing that I think is challenging, even I missed it a little bit, is making sure we're right on those sharps, right? I know going from measure 9 to 10, I had to stop. I was like, oh, that's a G sharp. So think about what these sharps are beforehand, right? I think we have 1, 2, 3, 3 different ones in a B natural that shows up. Yeah, that seems right. Because we have the G sharp, D sharp, C sharp, No F sharps. We have no F sharp. So we have 4 sharps, 1 natural that shows up. Effectively kind of modulates vaguely into the key of E. So just be mindful of where all those are. Or I think it's more just adding chromaticism, right? Because like in measure 9, there it's like going chromatic, right? A natural, B flat, B natural, C, B natural, C, C sharp, D. That's just all chromatic. Versus a couple other ones like measure 8 is kind of a vague E minor E. Yeah. Yeah, a vague E minor E kind of thing. And then same with like measure 3. So we kind of switch between F major and E minor for some reason. Who knows why, but that's just what they wanted from the Blazevich. I don't know. I think it works. It works. It doesn't sound weird at all. It's just weird. I think it's one of those things where it feels weird in the moment, but then you do it and you're like, oh, wait, no, this is fine. Yeah. So just be ready for those sharps that show up. This is another one where we especially want to fill in these gaps, right? We have a lot of large gaps. Like here we go. We got a large one right there. I think that's it. Like we have a couple other ones like here we're kind of like doing like a up 1 down 3. And that kind of repeats a lot. Boppy boppy bom 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 bom. So we have a lot of that kind of motion where it's up 1, down 2, etc. So just being ready for these jumps in here. Boppy boppy bom. These little sequency kind of things. And just be really clear on the rhythms here. Because big thing, it's not a huge thing, right? But we're in 5/4. So we need to make sure we're actually counting to 5. I think in previous times I've played this, I've messed that up a tiny bit. So just be careful that we're counting to 5 in each measure, right? 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, 4 and 5, and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. Just making sure we're aware of where the beats are so that we're right on time. And I would say most of our notes, we don't have any sort of markings, right? No lines, no staccatos, no marcatos, very few rooftops, or yeah, very few of the... Do we have any marcatos? These guys? No. We have this, but it's not the same. But yeah, so I would say in general, just focus on being articulate. To 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 to. Just think about filling each space, and then especially when we get down here, these are the same kind of deal as with the or these ones we want to think fill the space completely, and also emphasize the beginning. Dee da 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 ti ta ta. And we're kind of driving through it. And make sure in the we're crescendoing and it's kind of very heavy here, we're thinking like dee da ti ta ti ta ta. Dee da ti ta ti ta ta. I would even say, even though yes, we want to be even with it, think more emphasis with ti ta ti ta ti ta ta. Really emphasize those downbeats as opposed to every single note. But we still want to try to emphasize every note. Ti ta 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 ta. And drive through this. I drew that wrong. This crescendo here, right? This is where it drives. Here's where kind of like, maybe there's a crescendo, but here especially is where like, oh yeah, here's the crescendo. bum 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 beep bum 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 beep ba 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 ba. I slowed down again. Ba 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 ba. I want to slow down on this so hard, but I'm gonna play it. Just work on this for a second. Because obviously it's not the most technical part of it. I think this measure is probably one of the trickier ones, just because it has a lot of accidentals and in kind of weird places, right? Really move your air through these notes. So I'm going to work on those two little measures. I'm going to start, we're going to do this chunk and this chunk. The rooftop accent is the articulation of the different accent like markings. This, I guess, um, is shorter a little bit, but at the end of the day, it's still about emphasis, especially with these legato lines underneath. We want to kind of use these as drive-throughs. I would almost think about, and this kind of goes with the first etude especially. Um, I would almost think about accents like drivers instead of emphasizers, if that makes sense. Like, they're not the place, but they're pushing us towards the place. That makes sense a little bit. So we want to kind of use these to give us energy to push through to this final C here. And then back off. Be like, yeah, this is it. This is it. This is it. Oh, wait, no, never mind. It's not it. It's not it. This is actually it. Right? So we want to give suspense here and be like, yeah, we did it. And then we're like, oh, wait, no, we're keep on going. We're going to go. We're going to go all the way to the end. So let me try this whole thing one more time. And then we'll move. I'm going to take a quick break before we move on to the symphonic band etudes. But let's play that one more time. And yeah, here we go. Yeah, definitely did better with some things there. Obviously, still some mistakes, but that's okay. This has been more of sight reading, just to give you initial kind of here are some thoughts about these, my feedback, and what to think about. I think I confused myself here, but also something I forgot to mention is don't forget about accidentals carrying over, right? Because here it carries over, here it carries over, and this is one I missed actually. Here it carries over, this is still an F sharp, right? So make sure you're carrying those over. There may be, I mean, at this point for concert band, we shouldn't need reminders that, oh, this carries through the measure. Because obviously, yes, composer, we could put a reminder there. We could put a little thing in parentheses, or we could just flat out put it, right? But we need to be ready for the times when it's not there for us, when the publishers and our composers aren't being as friendly to us and are like, oh yeah, look at all these F sharps. Oh, you forgot to actually carry the F sharps through the measure. So be mindful of that. What was the other little lick that I was not so great? But yeah, just be as big as you can here. Really let out. I think if you let out with a lot of air, it will help this F to sound amazing. So focus on that. And then drive through. Like I said, really give like a lot of emphasis here. Because I feel like the thing I like about Blazevich, the etude book this is from, it has a lot of more technical etudes. But to me at least, they're more technical, lyrical etudes where they more feel like they're expressing something, whether as opposed to they're working on specific fundamentals. 'Cause obviously, there's fundamentals that are being worked here, right? We've got the up one, down three. That's a pretty common kind of pattern. We got some chromatics. We got dynamic contrast, right? This is I think this is one of the best technical etudes. It's a really great one. Or out of this lot, I mean. I think there are others that are my favorite. But that's a thing for another day. But yeah, I think that's the only two little things. Just make sure you carry the accidentals over. And yeah, that's the main thing. Okay, cool. I'm going to take a quick ugh. My throat's getting a little dry. I'm going to take a quick 5-10 minute break just to get some more water. And yeah, just to take a break from this for a minute or two. But I'll be back. Hang in there. We have one more to go, or 2 more etudes to go. Yeah, 1 more level, 2 more etudes. But yeah, thank you again for coming by. I appreciate it. I hope this has been really helpful. Like I said, I'm going to try, and I'll mention this again at the end, I'm going to try my best to do these kinds of streams on a more weekly basis, where we'll talk about fundamentals, I'll play etudes. I think something I want to do too is try to get some kind of feedback type streams where I ask for recordings from you, the audience, and I give live feedback on them. And depending on how many we get, we might do a few of those, but I just want to throw that out there as something that I want to do, that I'm interested in. Because obviously a lot of these tips I'm giving, I think are pretty good, but a lot of the tips are giving are more general tips for how I would approach these. And as I was telling someone earlier today at a different gig, everyone's going to play slightly differently, right? So I would really love to give opportunity to let's do some live feedback and hopefully give you some more value from this. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Like I said, we're going to take a quick break, and I'll be back with the last 2 symphonic band etudes. And yeah, See you soon. Be back. Test 1, 2. Hello, hello. Welcome back. We're ready to close this thing out. Sweet. Alright. Well, without further ado, we're going to move on to our last two, starting with the Symphonic Band Lyrical Etude. Fun stuff. Sorry, hold on. Okay, cool. There we go. Okay, cool. Starting with the Symphonic Band Lyrical Etude. We're off to the fun part of the stream. No, I'm just kidding. All of it has been fairly fun. I've been having a good time playing through all these etudes. I hope you've had a good time as well, and I hope you found a lot of this helpful. And if you want more of these, please let me know. If I get more support, honestly, I would definitely be willing to do more of these streams. Because I like doing them. But yeah. But yeah, so let's get on with the Symphonic Band Lyrical. Let me get a sense of where that is. This is one that I would, like I was saying in the beginning, I would say think less about the big beat and think more about the smaller beats. This is a tricky one. I do remember this one. I am working on this one. But it's kind of a fun one. It feels like... I can't remember the term or the song. There's some song where it's like very flowy. But just feels very flowy. I kind of like that. Here we go. And you can definitely tell this is the highest level, for at least Georgia, etude there is. It's very tricky, right? We've got straight 16ths just flowing through this whole thing, like I was saying earlier. It's very flowy. I think for this one, even though it's already slow, we want to think about it way slower, right? Because even with that little da dee da dee da dee da dee da 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 dee da da. Like we're moving already. We're moving and grooving. So even like thinking da dee da dee da 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 dee da da. And I think a lot of these endings of these measures with the 1, 2, 3, quarter to eighth note there, we can use that eighth as our breathing points. And much like with the first one, when I was talking about periods and commas, like I would say, like this is my interpretation. You can interpret however you like, but this is our ending here, and this is another kind of ending here. Da dee da dee da dee da dee da 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 dee da dee da 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 dee. Obviously, yes, this is a good place to take a break. Take a quick pause. I think this is a great breathing spot right there. But it's not a stopping point. This is more of a stopping point. Da dee da dee da dee da dee da 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 dee da 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 dee da dee da dee da 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 dee da 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 da. So we land back on the tonic, the kind of the root note of this whole piece, right? Because we're in E flat, right? So this E flat is kind of a core note for this whole thing. Here is kind of more just a passing tone, if you want to think about it like that, to be really complex here. I guess here's a weird place. I guess here is more of a yellow. This is a brief pause. We want to keep moving through the overarching phrase. And then the real pause is right here. That's the real end of the phrase, which once again, same kind of thing. I mean, at least the way I interpret this, those are kind of things. And then I don't think I need to highlight it, but I'm going to highlight it anyways for ending. Right? So really driving through these phrases. And I would say, I think it's okay to add like a little bit of a pause here, like a break in tempo. If you want to like connect this a little bit more to here, think dee da 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 da. That's fine too. But I think it's okay to go dee da dee da dee da dee da ta ta ta. Dee da dee da dee da dee da dee da dee da. To kind of like do a little tiny reset here. I think that's perfectly fine. You just have to make it convincing there. Kind of leave them in suspense. And keep going. You got to just kind of jump into it. Really make this gradual. Dee da dee da dee da dee da dee da dee da. Da dee da dee da dee da dee da 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 dee da da dee da dee da dee da 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 da. I feel like something that could, and once again, this is me. I'm going, since we're in the higher kind of level of this, I'm going a little bit higher level with my kind of thinking on this. We could even interpret this last phrase. I'm going to mark it with orange. Pink. We can think about this a tempo as maybe even faster. Like we start and then we get to that moment just to kind of drive a little bit further. Because obviously, I mean, either way works fine, but I think interpretation-wise, it does add a little bit more intrigue to pick it up there. I know that's quite, if you like play these full etudes, you'll, I don't think they have a lot marked a lot of times, but if you listen to different recordings of people playing these or listen to people play them live, not that that really happens very often outside of lessons, uh, people will interpret like recapitulation type things where it's like, we're playing the same thing we did in the beginning, as okay, let's pick this up a bit so we can kind of, you've already heard this, so let's change it up so it feels different, right? Or if you really wanted to, you could go the inverse, but I don't think slowing it down is the plan here. If you're going to interpret this as changing tempo, I would say change the tempo to be faster rather than change the tempo to be slower. And I mean, because I guess also with this we have the tempo change, right? Sorry, dynamic change is what I meant to say, right? Because we didn't have any of that in the first two measures. We had a crescendo, decrescendo in the second part, right? We have it there in the second two measures, but we add it in the first two measures there. So there is a little bit of difference there, but I think to really, if you really want this to shine, I would think about changing the tempo there to be not all tempo, but all tempo briskly, slightly more brisk. Still andante, but maybe like a more brisk andante. Because obviously andante means walking pace. So we can take that to mean a lot of things, right? We could take that as like a grave kind of funeral march walking pace, or kind of more sad, a little bit more trudging, or just tired maybe. Or we could take it as an andante, like we're just trying to move. We're just walking, you know. I'm walking here. Or we could even take it as we're trying to get places, right? We're trying to get our place faster than we could, right? We're trying to, like, we're using the GPS and says, we'll be there in 5 minutes. But it's like, nah, I'm going to get there in 3 minutes. Trying to really push against the times. So there's a lot of things we can do with andante. Like I say, with these tempos, I feel like most of these tempos are more suggestions rather than this is where it has to be, right? So if you go a little bit faster in general than this tempo, probably not bad. But if you go slower, same with slower. If you go slower, it's probably not bad either. I would just be careful about going too slow. Like if you're going like closer to like 30, becomes a lot more tricky. Because I think a big thing with playing things slower, especially lyrical things slower, it becomes a lot harder to push through these phrases. So anyways, that's my kind of high profile look at this. Because at this point, a lot of this is scale. Like, let's look at the first line. We're just going the first two measures. We're kind of just doing, was that 5 and 6, the 5th and 6th scale degree of E flat, da-dee, 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 and then we move down through the E flat scale, da-dee, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-dee, da-da, da-dee, 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 da-da-da-dee, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And then the end, we're kind of like just like dancing around the E flat there. We're like, oh, we're going to go down to the E flat. Oh, wait, no, we're going to a D first, and then we'll resolve to an E flat. Yeah, we're fancy here, right? And then next measure, we're just arpeggiating, right? It's a little bit more complex arpeggiations, but it is, well, it's not complex. We're just doing 2-octave arpeggiations on C, right? No, it is still on A. It is still centered on A. Is that we're starting from the third instead of the root. Da 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 dee da 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 dee da dee da 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 It's a mix of arpeggiation and scale / chromatic movement. And then for these two measures right here, I would really focus on really feeling these higher notes. You might even want to practice it like that, just to, if you feel really uncomfortable with that. And you can just work your way up, start somewhere more comfortable, like maybe B flat. Dee da dee, dee da dee da dee, dee da dee da dee, dee da dee da dee, etc., 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 etc. Hopefully that makes sense, kind of. I'll play it really quickly. It's definitely another one of those exercises where you can go higher, you can start lower if you really like to. But I like with these type of exercises where we're kind of like repeating a set pattern like that, I like to start somewhere where it's more comfortable and then work your way up. So maybe for you, A flat is like one of your best notes, both A flats, the A flat at the bottom of the staff and the A flat 3 lines below the staff. Both of those are your best notes in the world. That's probably a better place to start and then work your way upwards from there. Or if you're like a lot of B flat tuba players, B flat is comfortable for you. Starting there is a good place to start. I like, with a lot of these type of exercises, I like to start from open fingerings and work my way towards more complex fingers. But like I said, there's about a billion ways you could do these kind of exercises. Yeah. But yeah, and then once you're in this measure, keep your lips firm, your corners firm. Dee da dee da dee da dee. And just take your time with feeling those notes so you're not going too far down. Dee da dee da dee da dee da dee da dee da. But I'm gonna quickly like practice this little part. Cause that was a kind of a hot mess when I played it. Yeah, I feel better about that already. Yeah, but big thing with all these things, you have to take your time. You have to pace yourself. Um, yeah. But here we go. I'm going to play through this one more time, and then we'll move on to our last etude of the day, the technical for symphonic band. Yeah, that felt a little bit better. Still not perfect, but that's okay. This one's definitely one of the more complex etudes of the day. I want to make two quick little side notes about what I just played. Obviously, I added in measure 8 here. I added like a tiny bit of grace note. I would not recommend doing that. I like doing it for flavor, but just play what's on the page. Don't add anything fancy like that. Keep it simple. That's the best thing for this audition. Maybe not on your own, but afterwards you can try to experiment with adding little ornamentations and like that. But I would not recommend trying to add little ornamentations like that, little trills, grace notes, etc. that aren't written. If there are some written, obviously try to play them. But there are none written here, so it's better to err on the side of caution unless you can play it perfectly every time. Because I feel like even though I probably make it sound easy to do that little nuance of but it does take a good amount of musical sense to pull things off like that. But if you're someone who has like really great musical mind, you feel like you're comfortable doing it, I guess. But once again, just focus on what's on the page, and the things to add I think are more about changing dynamics and changing tempos. Those are our two things that we can change. And there's probably little parts where you can slightly change articulation style, but for the most part, focus on changing dynamics and tempos. Focus on those two things to kind of show expressiveness. Because I think with this one, it's like we have one breath mark, but we don't have quite as many breath marks with the previous ones. And I think part of that's intentional because this is meant to be more of high level etude, right? So it's very much put the breaths in where you can get away with it. I think the other thing I'll mention, because I corrected myself when I was practicing it, but I forgot, is be careful with this A at the bottom here. Remember, accidentals carry through. So that is indeed an A natural, not an A flat. I played it wrong that last time. Like I said, in a couple weeks, maybe like towards the end of this September, after I've actually worked on these, I'll do another stream where I just literally play through these. Just as like a record of here's what they should sound like. Better recording of what they should sound like. Because this is, like I said, this is me sight reading these for the first time in a while. I've read these, but it's been a hot minute. I think those are the two main little things. But yeah, I would say exaggerate dynamics. I would even say like some of these you can be subtle on, but like try to make different. Like you might even want to think like maybe you could think like a slight crescendo. Here's an interpretation interpretation idea for this. This is my last little comment on this, so we'll move on to technical etude, I promise. But you can even think about like you have an overarching crescendo through this first half through to the a tempo, or to here I mean, where each one of these crescendo decrescendos we drive a little bit higher and come like a little bit softer. So like the first one is very subtle. Da 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 dee da dee da 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 dee da 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 dee. And the next one we go a little bit more. Da 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 dee da 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 dee da 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 dee da da. And then the last one we go even further. Dee da dee da 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 dee da dee da. Dee da 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 dee da dee da dee da dee da dee da dee. And then you can either think reset, or we can kind of think the same way, where we kind of each one goes a little bit more. Although I feel like going back to piano here and making this more wide, going more from like pianissimo to fortissimo in a measure, especially when we just reset the piano, is going to be a little bit much maybe, but I don't know. It's a lot of these kind of decisions are up to you. I'm just giving suggestions on ways I would think about interpreting this. Ultimately, it's up to you. If you want to do those, that's great. If you want to think more like there's an overarching, like maybe you go, the big point is here. You crescendo to here, and then the rest of it, you like go a little bit high. You go a tiny bit less than here, here, and then here is where it's the softest. Maybe? I don't know. Like I said, there's a lot of ways you can interpret this. Like, I'll just mark those really quick. So the first one is, we can think, like, maybe this is like mezzo piano. And this one's piano. Or maybe, let's say mezzo forte. I'm not good at type drawing with my cursor, I apologize. And then this is like forte, maybe fortissimo, if you really want to. And then we could either come down from there, go from there to, let's say, mezzo piano. And then this could be a little bit louder to show the end, maybe mezzo forte. Or you could think the opposite, where this is mezzo forte and this is mezzo piano. I don't know. Like I said, there's about a billion ways we could interpret this, and all of them are right. Maybe not all of them, but a lot of them are right in their own ways. But anyways, let's keep going. I've dragged out each little section, which I think is fine for what I want to do, but we got to keep going. We have one more etude. The technical etude. Okay. So, the technical etude. Bum 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 be bum 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 be bum 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 be bum bum be bum 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 be bum 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 be bum 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 be bum 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 be bum 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 be bum 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 be bum 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 bum. I think I remember this one being weird. This being a weird little arrangement of this. I'll give my comment. I have a comment that I'm going to write it down. Okay, cool, but let's play it. Let's see how this goes. Surely we won't do that bad. Surely. Overall, I'd give myself a B on that. Maybe a high C, but somewhere in there. That wasn't too bad. I thought that went pretty well. There's a lot of pitfalls in here. The big thing with this, I think, is we have to count carefully and be aware of where the notes are. Because there's a lot of syncopation here, right? This is one, and, and 4, right? And there's a lot of that. Like here we go, and 3. And this is and 4 again. So we're kind of swapping between this like syncopation ongoing 1 and 1 and 4, or 1 and 3. We're switching between those two syncopations. I talked about filling in spaces. I think that can still be valid here, but here I would say with the syncopation, it feels slightly more annoying to fill in the gaps. Obviously, it's still doable. I think it's still viable to think dot 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 dot. But we have to really focus on the syncopations, and I think this one is better to think about it with the metronome, just thinking da 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 da, really getting in the middle of that. Da 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 da. Finding those gaps in between 1 and 1. And then being careful, yeah, but it's mostly like I said, it's mostly we're switching between the 1 and 3 and 1 and 4. We're switching to those a lot, and then we have a lot of this pattern here where it's 1 and 2 and 3 and 1, right? We have that a lot. So honestly, the big thing with this is just being careful of which patterns we're doing. Because here, we kind of go from, we have a lot of the 1 and 3 in this line, right? And then it changes up here, of course. So I think a big thing with this is we have to be careful of where the notes are. I would say even, this is something I like to do when I encounter more complex rhythms. I like to write little lines marking where the beats are. It's like 4/4, you have 4 beats per measure. There's beat 1, obviously it's the first note. Beat 2 is the and of this quarter note. So it's somewhere here-ish, because this is on the and, right? This is the and of 1. This is the and of 2. And then the and of 2, and of 3, and 4 are somewhere in the void here. And then the and of 4 is the one that hits. So we just need to be careful of where the notes are. It might be a lot to write this out, but I think that helps. I know for me that helps me when I have complex rhythms with lots of syncopations, is just to write out where the solid beats are. And even writing out where the ands are helps. But that's the biggest tip I have for this. Obviously, and the same kind of things, fill in the gaps, right? Do 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 do. You can just skip the thirds, skip the lines there, and then choose da da dee da dee dee, whatever. And we can do variations on filling in the filling in this gap with notes, but just being accurate with it. Half that is hearing it. That's all we're doing by da 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 da. All we're doing by filling it in is being able to hear that top note a little bit easier. But yeah, the biggest thing, we have to be active with this. If any of these are important to play slow, this is one of the most important to play slowly, so you get a grasp of it. I would even say think about it with the eighth note getting the beat. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and bum 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 bum. It's gonna feel easy for those measures, but I think it's important to practice this slowly so that we can play it accurately. And then I think the last line is one of the more complex. Bum 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 beep 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 da 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 dee dee da 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 dee dee da 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 da. Da, 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 da. Yeah, and you might even want to do as a little warm up to feel the kind of transition from eighth notes to triplets. Choose this pattern, like we can go with this rhythmic pattern, and we can do a scale pattern with that. Going up and down. We can do that with a lot of these rhythms. And this is kind of something in general that we can do for all of these. I'll mention this again at the end in my kind of final notes for everyone. But we can do that with the same rhythms in the beginning. I'm failing at that rhythm for whatever reason. It happens. But yeah, so taking your time, isolate the rhythms. That's my biggest suggestion for technical etudes is just isolate rhythms, separate them from notes. Yeah, but I'm going to go ahead and play this one more time because I felt pretty good about this one. This one's, like I said, this one's complex. I would recommend writing in accidentals where they're kind of carried over through measures. I don't think there's very many places. Oh, wait, no, there's down here. This G sharp carries through. And then this G sharp carries through here. A sharp carries through here. Yeah, I think those are the two places. But I would recommend writing in these accidentals. F sharps. These are easier to hit, but I feel like C sharps are initially some of the weirder notes. Right? I think I felt that way when I was first doing sharps. I was like, sharps in general, I was like, man, what are these? Get these out of here. But C sharp was like, especially like, what am I playing here? But anyways, I'm going to play this one more time. And then I'm going to do a quick little rundown of some last thoughts about general tips and things. But here we go. Okay. Yeah, that ending felt better. I think to make this ending feel more solid, you have to really lean almost at a crescendo into that last D. Dee-dum. To kind of lead it so it feels more final. Because otherwise, it just feels like a flash in a pan where it's like, are you done? I mean, obviously, they'll know you're done. But if I'm not a person who has the music, I'm going to hear it and be like, what? Huh? Be intentional. Okay. But yeah, that was much better. I think I got the syncopations right. Yeah, I think I got those right. Just be aware of which syncopations are which syncopations. And I think you'll have a lot of success with this. Okay. Cool. So, let's do some final thoughts overall. My biggest tip is take things slow. Break things down. Don't be afraid to break things apart. If you're just playing through the whole etude over and over again, you're doing things way wrong, and you need to fix that. It's not the end of the world, but just take your time, pace it out. Break down the notes and the rhythms. If you're not doing some of the things, I didn't demonstrate all of them. I'll probably demonstrate some more ways the next time, but separate the notes from the rhythms. Don't just be like, okay, we're playing notes and rhythms together. Separate them from each other. Okay. Oh, yeah, this is the comment I wanted to say a couple of seconds ago, right at the end of the last segment. I recommend, after you've finished with All State, you've done all the auditions, I highly recommend, for further practice, check out the books these are from and try to learn the full etudes of these. Some of them admittedly do get more complex, right? Like I have behind me actually the first etude for middle school, the full version of that back here. That's what I've kind of shown here. It goes a little bit longer, right? And has a lot of eighth notes. So like some of this stuff might not be quite so accessible for you, especially if you're in the middle school level. But I think it's a good challenge and good exploration further into what is this etude. Because it's like, I feel like these are now turned into little tasters of really great or good etude books for tuba. Because a while back, I'm glad that they've recently made it more, at least a snippet of a etude, but a while back I remember they made a lot of the etudes themselves. They had someone make it for them, and maybe sometimes it was okay, but most of the time it felt like the etudes were pretty trashy. So I'm glad that they're doing like this. Kind of gives tasters of these etude books, so you can be like, huh, this is cool. Where can I play more of these? And it's like, oh, it's from Bordoni or Blažević, or I think those are the main two for this year. Is there either a Bordoni etude or a Blasevich etude, which is another conversation of there's way more etude books. We should be diversifying more, but I will say to kind of defend them and like only choosing Blasevich and Bordoni, those are the two of the best etude books for having interesting lyrical and technical etudes that have some bits where it's accessible to pre-college students, because a lot of etude books get more complex. I know one is Tyrell. Its range generally averages in the staff a lot of times. There's also the Koprosh, which is just a technical etude book, but its technical etudes are more on the side of we're working on fundamentals rather than we're trying to make interesting music. So on average, a lot of those aren't great for these kind of things. But like some other ones, like I'm trying to think. Actually, we'll talk about some alternatives the next time. But I don't know. That's just my little comment. I'm gonna be like, I think it's good. I think these are great etudes. They're good for the levels they're at. Yeah, they're not too complex for the levels they're at. I don't think they have an obvious. They have an obvious sense of percussion where the lowest one is the easiest etudes, and then the highest one are the hardest etudes. So let me look at the technical ones one more time for concert band. Yeah, I think they are. Yeah. Yeah, but I think these are really good. They're great for their levels. And I don't think they're overly complex. Yeah, which is, like I said, is kind of the issue with some of these, like Tyrell. I don't think I would, unless I had like a super stellar high schooler, I don't think I would recommend the Tyrell Advanced Studies to a high school student, let alone a middle school student. Or actually, no, there's a few that I would, but they're not too complex. And they're more focused on, like, there's one in particular, I think it's like one of the first five. That's like a staccato exercise on piano. I don't think it would really be a great etude for this, because it's just focusing on being soft and showing contrast. So it, and really with the technical, you want to kind of show off different bits of technical, not just one bit of technical. Because if we're speaking technically, lyrical is a subdivision of technical playing, right? It's a technique. That's why it's called technical. We're practicing techniques. We're showing off different techniques. And I think techno is mixing different techniques together is the ideal way of thinking about it. But yeah, so ultimately, Blasevich and Bordoni are two of the best etude books to pull from. There are plenty of others, obviously. There's the practical studies, the Getchell. Those are good, but once again, I think some of those don't really translate as well to this kind of thing. And the other technical / lyrical book that is great for tuba, but once again, pre-college, it gets hit or miss, is the low etudes for tuba, Phil Snedeker. They're great for low range playing, because that is a good mix of like some more technical type etudes and some more lyrical type etudes. But it goes into some extreme low registers, which on 3-valve tubas gets to be kind of impossible to play. So thinking about that, makes it less accessible for the general public. Because not every school is going to guarantee that every single person is going to have a 4-valve tuba. It's definitely a dream, for sure. I think most schools should provide 4-valve tubas, but when it comes down to it, especially thinking about money, getting a whole set of 4-valve tubas is not the easiest. It's expensive. Let me think of some other general tips. I can't think of me on top of my head. Like I said, we're going to do this again next week, but next week we're going to focus more on just general fundamentals and scales. We'll talk about scales, practicing scales, using scales to build your fundamentals. Yeah. But yeah, so until then, I'll see you next time. Thanks for joining me. I've had a lot of fun doing this. I hope you found this informative. I hope you have found this entertaining. I hope this helped you. Ultimately, that's why I do this. I want to help y'all. I know for me, when I was going through All State, I think I did find etudes, but I don't know. I just like sharing my knowledge in general. So that's why I do this. Okay. Well, anyways, I hope you have a great day. Until next time, I'll see you later. Bye.